So, okay, I just want to ask you a few questions. And the first question I want to ask you is, do you believe in God? The fact is, most people say yes, but you know, there are going to be some people who say no. And I have some different ways in which I address that. The other day, I had heard a comment, and I thought it was a very good question. And the question was, at what point in your life did you give up on the notion of God? And why? What was happening in your life then? Not only when did you believe, but when did you give up? And another question oftentimes I will ask usually is there a time in your life when you thought there was a God, or there could have been a God? And what was happening in your life then? And I'll build my conversation around those moments. What you usually will unveil with most people is that most individuals have committed to their atheism because of an emotional experience. I'll give you one more illustration, then we'll move to the next one, because it still fits with this idea. I was actually in Ukraine. I was asked to speak to a gentleman who was a committed atheist. This guy's name was Sergey, and I sat down, and we were conversing with one another, and I said, Sergey, listen, let me ask you a question. Do you believe in God? He was a really big guy. We were sitting on a table. He was on one end of the table. I was on the other end of the table. My translator was in the middle of the table. His wife was on the other side. Sergey said, I'm a communist. I've been grown up a communist. I was raised a communist. I serve communism. In communism, we don't believe in God. We only believe in what we can see. We only believe in what we can put our hands on. And he grabbed the table, and he lifted the table, and he pounded. He was a big dude. He pounded the legs of this table on the ground. Boom, boom, boom. We believe in this table. And then Sergey began to go in. I didn't even get to ask a dialogue question. He began to go into the story of his life and his rise through communism, and how he went from a low-level person in the Communist Party to being one of the lead persons in that region in the Communist Party. And his concluding statement was, and we gave our lives to communism, and we served communism, and listen, this is what he said, and we worshipped communism. And communism left us. And I don't want to believe in your God, because I'm afraid your God will leave me too. I just asked a question. God was already speaking to him. I would have never known it if I hadn't been willing to dialogue with him. I responded to him. Sergey, that's interesting. What the Bible reveals is that you were made by a God who made you to know him and worship him. And that when you refuse to know and seek and worship him, you cannot turn off the impulse of your life, what you are made to do. And so if you will not worship God, you can't stop worshiping. And if you don't worship God, what will happen is you'll worship communism. You'll even worship, and I grabbed the table and pounded the legs back, you'll even worship this table. But you weren't made to worship communism, and you weren't made to worship this table. You were made to worship the infinite, eternal God who made you. Emotional reasons why people don't believe in God? There is a conversation to be had. There is a dialogue to be gained. The first question is just, do you believe in God? Well, what do you believe he's like? What were your first thoughts about him?